Hey guys, we just finished up another podcast, and I'm here with.
Artie from the South Bay Marine Group.
We just had a very in-depth conversation of his story and how he came from where he started to where he is now, and it's a great one. I hope you guys have a listen. So it's good because I don't know a whole lot about you, but I'm glad you reached out to me on Facebook. You know, I think we have the same thought process in a lot of things. So where we normally start is we go back to like high school days. Like, when did you start working, and how did it all start? Did you work during high school?
Yeah, so
I figured you would.
so I worked for a company in Oakdale called Action Sports.
Okay.
It's an old STPA store that specialized in ski rentals and snowboard rentals and kayaks in the summer and marine supplies, and that's kind of where I got my start in retail.
Okay.
I also worked for Higbee Collision.
Okay. West Islip.
Yep, they were neighbors of mine growing up, and I grew up with the two sons. And
So you grew up on the water?
yeah, I grew up. Yeah, I grew up in West Islip on the water.
Nice.
And the owner of Higbee Collision, Charlie, had opened up Dynasty Limousines, and I worked with him for a short period of time while I was going to college. And
Driving limos or
no, I
just
couldn't
kinda
drive him. I wasn't old enough.
Okay.
Once in a blue moon, I'd get forced
cleaning
to
them and stuff?
Yeah, I would drive them from the front of the facility to the back of the facility, and then we would have someone that would clean them, and I would add ice and make sure the liquor was full and fold all the napkins.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I worked at a car wash when I was a kid, and we thought it was like the coolest thing to pull it from the vacuum station to the thing. It was like 20 feet, maybe not even. So
But that
we
was
were 14 moving a car up. We were like,
that
oh,
was the
so
excitement.
Cool. Yeah, and then if a manual shift came in, we were like, oh shit. We figured it out though.
So the majority of my, high school years and into college was spent at Action Sports. I started there as like a technician that sharpened skis and installed bindings on skis, and slowly started to get a little more into snowboarding. And snowboarding wasn't really a big thing back then. I mean, to the point where my high school ski club wouldn't allow you to go snowboarding.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I slowly started.
What, they thought it was dangerous? Or?
They just thought it was a ski club, not a snowboard club. I argued it. And
yeah.
I think in senior year I got to go snowboarding.
Oh, okay, cool.
So working with Paul from Action Sports, he kind of mentored me, and I kind of helped him build the snowboard business. And he actually recently retired, and I'm still in touch with him once in a while.
So he was a mentor of yours.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm big on that.
Definitely.
Obviously, probably big for you as well.
Yes.
So he kind of brought you into sales and how to, kind of like he brought you on how to operate a business a little bit at a younger age.
He taught me about customer service and sales, and he always had a saying, and my father had the same saying too, the profit's in the buy.
Okay.
If you bought the product at the right price, you could offer it at the right price and get a little bit leverage over the competition.
Right.
And the price wasn't always the most important thing. It was the customer service, and it was the relationship between you and the customer, and the facility, and the overall inventory and how it was presented, and what you brought to the table kind of became an end result of who came in. And
right. Warren Buffett has a quote on it. He said something along the lines of, and don't quote me on it, but he says, no one ever remembers what they paid for a product, but they remember the experience.
Correct.
So if the experience is good, that's what's most important. And that hits home to business owners,
100%.
Because you can't always be the cheap guy.
Sometimes being the cheapest isn't the best.
Right. Yeah.
Being the most expensive isn't the best, but
no.
Somewhere in the middle. And I think
we live there.
I think that, like you said, I can't remember the exact saying, but the cost is long forgotten, but the quality will be remembered.
Yes.
Something along those lines. I don't remember the exact
That's
saying.
my partner's, he loves that saying. Yeah, and I'm going to kill it if I try to say it right now.
Yeah, that was the best I could come up with on
now it's going to bother me.
But I have a good saying too, that we don't do it twice for the same low price.
Yeah, right, exactly. So now you're working there. His name is Paul?
Paul, yes.
So what age did you stop working there? Or work up in
So
it? Do you work after high school?
yeah, so I worked there through high school. I worked there into college. I went to Dowling
Okay.
for a little while
What'd you go for?
for business. I never wound up graduating. I tried my parents were very big on me going to school and getting an education, and
Why do you think that was? You
I
talk about this a lot.
yeah. So I think that just the whole world was just at that time was
Ingrained.
yeah. You have to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not gonna be successful. And I remember my godfather saying to me, rest his soul, very successful guy, probably the most successful guy that I knew at the time.
Another mentor?
Another mentor, and he said to me, "You don't have to go to college."
Right.
He says, "If you want to go, go, but there's a lot of things that you can do without college."
Right.
And I tried. I went to Dowling, I went to Suffolk Community College, I went to CW Post, and I don't know. I just never
Didn't click.
never clicked, never finished.
Square peg, round hole.
Yeah, I felt
Yeah.
that there was a lot of things that I could do without college, and I felt that there was some things that I could have done, had I graduated and maybe gone down a different path. But
Right.
I was always interested in, hands-on, not so much becoming a mathematician or
Right.
a school teacher or a computer engineer or something along those lines.
Right.
So after high school, I tried college and couldn't really do college and a full-time job. So I slowly started to find my way out of
Going to college.
and I no longer was working for Paul anymore because I had moved up into management, and it had required a lot of my time,
Right.
and I couldn't give up my
Both,
time
yeah.
to do both. So I got into buying cars from the auction,
Okay.
and I would specialize in one car,
Right.
Ford Taurus.
Okay.
It was cheap. It was easy to come by. I'd buy them sometimes with some damage,
Right.
and I would take a door off of one and put it onto another one.
Now, did you learn that from working at Higbee?
Yeah, I was always into cars. My friends and I were always into cars. We would
Right.
buy cars and soup them up and fix them up and
Right.
go up on Deer Park Avenue and get in trouble.
Right.
And the car thing slowly turned into going into business with a neighbor and starting like a pre-owned car dealership.
Okay.
And I did that for a couple of years, and then in 2008.
Well, that you don't just start a dealership, but you guys had to rent the space, right? You had a lot.
So I found a piece of property on Sunrise Highway that
Yeah.
was originally a rental car company location that was closed up. I had gone through all the rigmarole of dealing with with the town. Actually, it was the village.
Right.
Dealing with the village, trying to get special use permit, and
Right.
it gave me a great experience
Of understanding
understanding
the red tape.
municipalities and red tape and politics and.
How old were you then, would you say?
I was in my mid-20s.
Okay, so you're still young.
Mid-20s.
It's tough when you're in your 20s because no one really trusts you, right? You're too young to do this. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you mean you're doing that? How can you?
Yeah.
How are you doing that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to do it. Why
Right.
can't I do it? Where are you
Right.
getting the money? Well, I don't really need that much money. I have a little bit of money, and I'm going
Yeah.
to get a partner, and we're going to try our best.
Take the risk, yeah.
And 2008, the financial crisis came.
Right.
And they did that cash for clunkers, and the bank crisis, the financial crisis with all the banks, and that put me out of business.
Really?
Yeah,
That's tough.
It was probably the darkest time of my.
And no matter how hard you tried to fight against it, right? It's like,
Yeah, the problem was that when you did cash for clunkers, you had people that were coming through the door that wanted to buy, $3,000 to $6,000 cars, and they were junking those cars.
Right.
And I had a lot full of $10,000 to $20,000 cars,
Right.
and I couldn't sell them. I couldn't finance them.
Right.
Banks weren't giving out loans. If you were getting a loan, the funding was taking weeks.
Right.
Couldn't pay back the floor plan in a reasonable amount of time, and my heart really wasn't in it, and I didn't like the industry, and I felt that it was time to get out, and the cash for clunker and the
That's a business that's really heavily on price, right? No matter how much someone likes you, if they can get
It's
it
all
for
about the product
at
and the
least
price.
$10 a month less, they're going to go somewhere else, right? That's a numbers game.
It's 100% was a numbers game.
Yeah.
And I felt that no matter what customer service I gave, it didn't matter.
Right.
It was all about the price, and you can't call the used car factory and say, I want a Toyota Corolla with 35,000 miles in silver,
Right.
with a sunroof.
Right.
So you'd have it in gray. They wanted it in black. It wasn't my thing. I think I went down that road because I was persuaded by other people and maybe a desire that I had that I just didn't know
False hope.
the full extent, and
Right.
false hope.
Right. Okay. So then that's a dark time.
Yeah, so I had to kind of reinvent myself at that point because I hadn't gone to college, and
Right.
my
So
parents
how old were you then?
was in my mid-20s.
Okay.
So it only lasted probably four or 5 years. So I would say from probably like 23 to 27.
You had the business.
Yeah, somewhere
Okay.
in that ballpark. There was some bumps in the road and some
Right.
arguments, and wound up buying the partner out at one point. And,
Right.
one thing led to another, and I was forced to sell the inventory and close the door and sell the fixtures.
Right.
And I kind of had to reevaluate my situation and think about, was I going to go back to school? Was I going to get a job somewhere? I kind of felt that I never wanted to own my own business again.
Right.
I didn't want to be in that position
You
again.
get discouraged.
100%. So then I just kind of started finding some different jobs, trying to make a decision on what I wanted to do.
Right.
And
But you had the background from the sports store when you were a kid, right?
so I had some retail experience, some experience as a buyer. I had some finance experience from the car thing.
Right.
Had some mechanical ability, passion for boats and water related
Right.
stuff, and I kind of knew that I wanted to somehow get into the boat business, but I just wasn't sure where or how.
Right.
And I wound up taking a part-time job with a gentleman that used to work on my parents' boat, and I went to work with him a couple days a week. His name was Willie. He gave me a job, paid me decent. At least
Right.
I thought it was decent at the
Right.
time.
Not really from Oakdale, is it?
No,
Ah.
it was in Amityville.
Okay.
And Willie gave me a job and kind of taught me a little bit about how the marine industry worked and how to operate a boatyard and
Right.
how to drive the forklift and the travel lift and how to pull an engine out and put an engine in and how to repair an engine. And basically I got a really good education on mechanical repairs.
Really good education. So I was talking to Steve Macho the other day. He owns Clearflow up here in Lyndhurst, and he said that, and I said I'm gonna start using that as well. I've used it, but when he said it made click because he's a successful guy. He said we shouldn't even call it college anymore. We should call it furthering education, and everyone gets a further education because how much stuff is there to go wrong or to learn about even operating a boatyard? Forget about even getting into the nitty gritty of fixing a boat, and then how many different
lot.
boats are there and different part numbers and different so that's involved, so that how many years did you work with him?
So I worked for him up until Hurricane Sandy. So I think Hurricane Sandy was
12
2012. So I was
12 or 11?
I think
forget.
11 or 12. I was
Yeah.
in my late 20s.
Oh no, it had to be 12. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in my late 20s, maybe 3 years. But he would lay me off in the wintertime.
Because it was slow.
Because it was slow.
Right.
And I would work for a friend of mine, had a truck repair business.
Okay.
And I would work for him in the wintertime.
Right.
And then
So
once...
you never sat idle. You always...
I never sat home.
Yeah.
Did all kinds of stuff. Bought a bunch of used snowmobile parts one time from a company that went out of business, and I eBayed things over the winter.
Right.
I worked for the truck repair company a couple times over the winter.
Right.
I was trying to broaden my horizon and try and decide what I wanted to do.
Find your niche.
Right, where I wanted to go. And I started buying and selling some used boats out of the place in Amityville where I used to work.
Okay.
And it got to the point where he would tell me that I don't have work for you tomorrow. It might rain or something.
Right.
So I would go down there on my own,
Right.
and I would work on this used boat that I had bought. And while I was there, he'd be like, "Oh, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you drive the forklift and give me a hand?" And I'd be like, "I thought you didn't need me to work today."
Right.
So I found myself going there and helping him and not getting paid. And I decided that, what I think the right thing to do at this point maybe is to branch out, and I'll go on my own.
Take another risk.
I had a little pickup truck and some tools, and I'll continue to work here with him.
Right.
But I'm gonna start to pick up some of my own customers, and maybe I can do like a mobile marine service. That was my thought. So he started to see the money that I was producing, buying and selling some of these used boats, and I think that he felt that I was using his facility
As that.
and his equipment to actually put this stuff together. Not necessarily selling them out of the location, but
Right.
using his facility to put the stuff together.
Right.
And he came to me and he wanted to go partners in like a used boat business. And from previous experiences, I didn't want to partner.
Right.
And I didn't want to go into selling any type of pre-owned products.
Right. Been there, done that.
Yeah, it was just not something I was interested in.
Right.
So we went back and forth, and I had finally said to him, "I'm not interested. I'll continue to spin wrenches for you and work at the marina, but I'm going to just use this as a subsidy to subsidize my income when I'm not being utilized here."
At least you were being honest with him.
He didn't like that.
Oh, you didn't?
No. And
Because I had a similar conversation with my boss when I started doing. I only did it for like 6 months before I left, but I went into it telling him basically this was the idea. It just happened sooner than he thought. So I'm guessing the same thing with him.
similar situation.
Yeah.
So it would come down to the point where he would call the night before and say, "Hey, I'm going to need you tomorrow," and I would tell him, "Well, I've got 2 jobs planned for tomorrow morning, and I could come in after lunch."
Right.
And it got to the point where he called me one day and said, "Whatever stuff you have over here, it's time to move it out of here. We're going to hire somebody else. I need my keys back." And I looked up to this guy, and I still look up to him, and I still have a place in my heart for him. And I wouldn't be where I am today without what eventually came from the relationship. But I was
You were hurt.
sour. I was upset. I was hurt over it.
Right.
Came there, packed up my stuff, gave him my keys. Was upset. I left.
And did you burn any bridge there, or was there some harsh words?
No, it was
or
a cordial.
You still kept cool about it?
Cordial.
'Cause I talked to the kids about that. Like,
So
don't act on emotion.
I'm very, very. I'm a firm believer in don't burn the bridge. Try and leave on whatever best terms you have.
Right.
I'm gonna have guys that have worked for me that I've let go and actually found them jobs that might fit them better, or different places.
Right.
I had a technician that worked for me for 3 years that quit and had called up the other day and came into one of the locations and was looking for a job. And we didn't have a job for him. We don't have any open positions right this minute, but I called around a couple places, and I think I may have found him someplace to go.
That's good.
So to go back to the Willie days,
Yeah.
he actually saved me from a disaster that would have probably cost me whatever money I had saved up. Hurricane Sandy came
Right.
a few weeks later and destroyed him.
Oh.
And I had 2 brand new engines sitting on the floor in there.
Right.
And if I wouldn't have moved them, they would have got destroyed.
Oh shit.
And that's probably all the money I had at the time.
Was
you
in
know,
those
the real
engines.
money I had was laying in those crates.
Right.
And the boat I had in the yard there,
Right.
blocked up by the fence. And luckily I had moved all that stuff to higher ground.
Right.
And Hurricane Sandy came and it decimated
Wow.
a lot of the marine industry.
Yeah. No, I remember because we were busy with the boilers.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
I don't wish it again. A lot of people do. I don't wish that was like blood money.
Yeah, that's like snow plowing. It's
Yeah, it was not fun.
no fun.
Yeah.
No fun. Yeah. So he had reached out to me after Sandy and wanted to know if I could help him, and I was still sour over the whole thing, and I had some other responsibilities that I needed to handle, and I told him that I really couldn't. I wanted to,
Right.
but I had some other stuff that was a little more pressing,
Right.
and I had to handle it. So fast forward about a year later, I had now rented a small little garage, and I had one guy working for me, and he called me and he said, "I'm done. I'm gonna
Hang it up.
retire."
How old was he at the time?
Mid 50s.
Oh, so he was young.
Mid 50s.
Okay.
His goal was to move back to Florida.
Okay.
So his wife had a good job. He was interested in real estate. That's what he would do in the wintertime. He would buy a house on spec in the winter,
Right.
and he would work on the house in the winter. And then
Right.
once the winter was over, the house would be pretty much close to being done.
Right.
He'd come back to the marina and start putting the boats in the water.
Okay.
So I kind of laughed at him, and I was like, "Well, that's great that you want to leave, but I don't have the kind of money you're going to need to
Right.
get out of there." So one thing led to another, and the number wasn't as much as I had thought.
That
and
happens more often than not, right?
a lot
Yeah.
more often than
Yeah.
not. And I think that he felt that he had kind of groomed me into being able to operate the
You
the
could
facility.
make that facility work.
Right.
Right.
I think that he knew that I had a rapport with the customers. And I think from his point of view, it was probably the easiest exit strategy.
Yes.
No advertising, no brokers, no financing involved.
Right.
And he didn't own the property.
Right. So we had a long lease there, or
He had a decent lease.
right.
So I kind of laughed at him a little bit, and I was like, yeah, well, how much?
Right.
And he said a number, and I said to myself, it's a lot less than I anticipated.
Right.
So I said, well, what's up with the landlady? And he said, well, go talk to her, see what she thinks.
Yeah.
So I went there with my girlfriend, which is now my wife. This is probably almost 10 years ago. I knocked on her door, and I had known her from working there, and we had a nice conversation. And I called him back the next day, and I said, I'll give you a third of the money now. I'll give you a third of the money April 1st. This was like January.
Right.
I'll give you a third now. I'll give you a third in April. And I need you to stay till June 1st. And June 1st, I'll give you the last of the money. And you can leave.
Wow.
And
So you bought the business. You bought the
I
equipment.
bought the business. Some of the
tools.
equipment he owned. Some of the equipment the landlady owned.
Now, would you say, because I find this more often than not, a lot of successful people like helping younger, driven people because they see them from
100%.
So you would say that landlady obviously took a liking to you. She saw you working already. When you asked her for the opportunity, she was
I had a rapport
inclined
with.
to want
I
to
had
do
a
it.
rapport with her. I was younger than I am now. 10 years younger. I was in
Right.
my early 30s.
Right.
I think that she took pride in the fact that she could help me.
Right.
I think that she enjoyed the fact that she had something to offer, and
Yeah.
I think she also thought that, hey, this guy's in his early 30s, and I'm looking for a good tenant that's going to be
be here a
here
while.
for the next 20 years or
Yeah.
something, and I think that
Well, those are the best deals, right? When both parties are happy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it worked out well, and I moved in there in I I guess, the end of March,
What year was that?
2014.
It's so weird because I moved in my first building in 2014, and I looked at it with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife.
Wow.
So
Wow.
stories
Okay.
are kind of line
Yeah.
up. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. Cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So I,
So there you are. You own a business
yeah, so now I
that you
own a
already
business
know about.
that I know about. I know the customers. I've worked there before. I know how it works. I've been running this through my mind for years.
Yeah.
How I'm gonna get to this point, and here I am. I'm
Opportunity hit, and you took it.
at this point, and I'm thinking back to myself. Well, this is incredible because I had no idea that this could even happen like this.
Right.
So right place, right time, right people.
But you put yourself out there to be in the right place at the right time, right?
I kept telling myself
You always
that
networked, right?
this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted, and I surrounded myself around that industry.
Right.
And sooner than later, something
It was your turn.
came to tuition.
That's awesome. So then, now you own it. It's 2014. How was your first year in business?
First year in business was financially was great.
Right.
Physically and mentally
Hours and hours.
was exhausting.
Now, was it just you, or he had some staff there still?
So
that stayed?
there was no staff there.
Oh shit.
The one young man that was working with me at this little garage I had.
Right.
It was just him and I.
Was he? He must have been excited that he's going from a garage now he owns a
Yeah,
marina.
yeah, he was excited. His father actually was in the marine industry also.
Okay.
So he was kind of felt like he was following in his father's footsteps, I guess, a little bit.
Right.
I don't think his mother and father originally wanted him to go
Right.
down this road.
Right.
He actually still works for me.
I was gonna say. Yeah.
He's still with me. He's probably my best guy, one of my best guys. We're very, very close, and I try and take care of him as if he's my family.
Right.
There's always bumps in the road and
Yeah.
disagreements and stuff like that. But I think that I try and explain to him that I treat you like family, and family argues.
Right.
And not everything is easy when you're family versus someone that just comes in at 8 o'clock and leaves at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Business is hard, especially when you're growing it. One of my guys, my right arm guy, his name is Warren, and he was one of my first I had guys work for me. I pay him when I could, but he was like my first legitimate. I got to pay this guy health insurance and get him on. I want to say he quit on me twice, but I know the one time he quit, it was just because we were going crazy. We pulled in 50 directions. He was like, I'm just done. And then I called him a week later, and I was really mad at him because I really rely a lot on him.
You were disappointed.
And I called him a week later, and he was like, I was waiting for you to call me. He goes, I was like, are you coming back? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, so it was a week without Warren. He goes, that's the only way I get a vacation around here. I got to quit. so I hear you, but it's funny.
So I knew that the equipment that was there was old and antiquated.
Okay.
And I knew that I needed to buy some newer equipment to attract some better clientele.
Right.
So I invested basically all the money I made the first year.
Right.
And I bought a bigger, better, newer travel.
Now, how many
lift.
boats are in that yard?
So when I first got there, when I worked there, we stored between 40 to 50 boats.
Oh, that's a lot.
There was
For one guy.
Well, it was him.
Yeah.
His two kids worked there in the summertime. It was
Oh, so his kids wanted nothing to do with it?
No, they were. One of them was becoming an attorney, and the other one was going into the Coast Guard,
Okay.
and the other already had a career going on.
Right.
So I kind of knew the potential, and I would kind of tell him like, "Hey, why don't we do this? Or if we bought a bigger forklift, we could put some boat racks up."
Right.
And I think he was just content, and I think he knew that he was going to be getting out of it soon.
Right.
So the first thing I did was I bought a bigger travel lift. I bought a bigger forklift.
All the ideas you had.
Put some boat racks up.
Right.
And I didn't double the storage, but I went from 40 to 50 boats to 70 or 80 boats. And I had to hire somebody else.
Right.
So we hired 2 more people, hired another mechanic, and we hired a yard hand.
Okay.
Guy to wax hulls and paint bottoms.
And how many mechanics would you say you went through, or you got lucky?
At this point, where I am right now.
Well, no, then.
Then?
Like when you hired a mechanic, did he? Because what happens with mechanics, they say they know more than they really do, and then you find out, right?
So luckily, this mechanic I had hired.
Which is the perks of being a working owner, right away.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that since I was on the ground, being a mechanic myself,
Right.
I kind of did a lot of the troubleshooting myself.
Right.
And a lot of pointing and clicking, like, hey, do that.
Right.
This thing needs a new IAC, or
Right.
let's do a tune-up and see what happens.
Right.
So luckily, the 2 of them lasted for a couple of years.
Okay.
And I wound up hiring some more people.
Right.
And it slowly started to grow.
Good.
And luckily, the area that I was in was kind of asking for some new blood. Was asking for a cleaner facility. You would be surprised what a little bit of paint and some fresh gravel
Right.
could do.
Right.
I remember when I first got there was a 1964 Yale forklift, I think, and it was battleship gray. And I painted it. I painted it Rust-Oleum blue.
Okay.
I painted the wheels white.
Right.
I think I painted the mast black.
Okay.
And a customer said to me, "Oh, you got a new forklift?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Nah, a little paint, make it what it ain't."
Yeah.
So the clientele started to change. I started to see bigger boats coming in.
Right.
I started to see better boats coming in, nicer boats.
Right.
And with the nicer boat, bigger boat, the clientele changed and the budget of the customer changed also.
Right.
Where when I worked for Willie, we worked on inboard, outboard boats only. We didn't work on outboards, and we did the bare minimum. We waxed them, painted them,
Right.
tuned them up, and put them in the.
But now you wanted to offer more services.
So I started offering some other work. We started offering some more repowers. We started offering, electronic installations and some stuff that other guys in the neighborhood should have been offering, but.
Now the electronic stuff, was that kind of out of your realm, or you kind of knew about it, or did you have to bring someone in?
So I had
to lean on with.
I had owned some boats prior,
right?
And I didn't have a lot of money, but I was handy, so I kind of taught myself how to do some installations.
Okay.
So basic installations we could handle, and
right.
Most of the boats that were coming in were basic installations.
Did the reps of those manufacturers help you, guide you, or you made obviously you made relations with manufacturing, right?
So at that point, I had no franchises, no dealer connections.
Okay.
Everything was being bought through a vendor or a wholesaler or a distributor.
And so those distributors in like in my industry, even if you're we don't have lines, we could technically buy whatever we want depending on what supply house, but they usually send reps to us, which we make relationships with, which helps us with the customer.
So the only rep that I ever really got was a guy that who I still do business with. This guy, John Curran, friend of mine now from years and years. And I think the first season I did 12 engine repowers.
Oh wow!
With Merc Cruiser engines, and Willie probably did 12 his entire career there.
Wow!
And that kind of opened up the door. He came in, introduced himself, and kind of started to give me some literature and.
It's funny when you start buying product, you start raising some
sudden,
eyebrows. Yeah.
That went from like a grain of sand to a piece of rice.
Yeah.
In the scale of things.
Right.
And I remember sitting in the office one day with him, and it was the middle of August, and it was hot, and it dawned on me. Well, I bet if I put an air conditioner in,
people would want to come.
People might want to come in and actually have a conversation with me.
Right.
So I see on the wall you have a mini
Mini
split.
right?
So I had a mini split installed, and it was amazing. I got a mini split and a credit card machine,
Okay.
and all of a sudden, my sales started to just grow. And it wasn't just because of the mini split and the credit card machine, but the fact was that a customer would now walk into the office, and rather than trying to run to their car to leave,
Right.
they would spend a couple minutes with me and say, "Oh, you know what? By the way, my boat pump's not working,
Right.
and I saw you did a GPS on the guy so and so next to me. How much is that?" So all of a sudden, it just continued to grow and grow, and I couldn't believe how it was growing. And I slowly hired a girl to work in the office, and
Okay.
went from handwriting all the work orders and the invoices to
Right.
getting QuickBooks.
Right. Okay.
And it just slowly started to grow and grow until I think I had 6 or 7 employees at that location. And I remember one of the employees.
And you had a consistent customer flow too, right?
Yeah,
People would come back every year.
yeah. It's the same customer over and over again.
But you invested time, energy, and money into it.
And I made sure that they all felt comfortable and that they were getting a fair shake, and that I
Right.
wasn't.
Hitting a home run.
Right. It was a bunch of RBIs, not a bunch of home runs. And
Right.
I see like some of my friends and business associates, and I think that your business is a lot of service related, where you might install a boiler or an air conditioner,
Right.
and now that customer is going to come back once a year for service.
Right.
Whereas if you do a rehab on a house,
Right.
and you sell the house, you're never going to go back to that house. You're never going to see the customer again.
Yeah.
So in my industry, I felt that if I gave them a reasonable price and I gave them a good at the end of the day, the product was what they asked for, and it was clean and
And you
neat.
stood behind it. if
Stood
it failed.
behind it, gave
Yeah.
them a warranty that they were going to come back,
Good.
and they would tell their friends. Didn't really do much advertising, a lot of word of mouth. And it slowly started to grow and grow and grow until one of my employees, this guy Pat, who's no longer with me, he had moved to Florida recently. He said to me, "You're going to need a bigger boat." And I said, "A bigger boat?" I said, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And he goes, you can't tell that
You only make so much here.
you outgrew this location."
Within how many years would you say that is?
I would say within the first three or 4 years.
So you just catapulted, basically.
It just went from 0 to hero
That's awesome.
in no time. And I poured a lot of my heart and soul into it. Spent a lot of nights until 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night there trying to organize things and clean things up and
Establish your systems.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
Which is very hard to do.
it's time
People
consuming
don't realize how hard that is. And it's constantly changing, right? Your
changing
systems,
by the day.
how to be more efficient, how to, especially with the price of things nowadays, you have to be as efficient as possible.
The paperwork was always the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Was getting the technician to. It's still.
Fill out the ticket right.
It's still a problem.
Same with us.
It's the same thing. I can't read his
Name,
handwriting.
address, phone number, keep it on the ticket.
What'd you do? How long did it take? Why did it take so long? So a lot of systems got put into place.
Right.
I generated a lot of forms to fill out to make things easier.
So now, but you're very approachable too as an owner. So customers know, because when you have mechanics, and I say this to my customers too, like they're not always gonna, there's gonna be mistakes. There's either gonna be human error or technical error. As being an approachable owner, it makes the customer more comfortable, right? So if there's anything wrong, they know that they can go to you or call your cell phone, and you're gonna address it.
If there was a problem, and there's always a problem.
Always.
No one's perfect.
Every day.
Nothing's perfect. If something's coming out perfect, just wait, because there's gonna be a hiccup somewhere. So I was always, only a phone call away, and then I had taken an employee that was brought in as a mechanic, and I had slowly kind of groomed him into what I felt was going to be management material. Okay. He had come from a management background, but he didn't want to be manager anymore. He wanted to go back to fixing boats. And I learned a lot from him, and I owe a lot of my credit to some of the things that he taught me and the ways he taught me to do it. And one of the things he used to always tell me is that don't let the customer dictate to you how to do it, when to do it, or why to do it.
Right.
This is your business. This is your livelihood, and you're going to do it how you want to do it, when you want to do it.
Right.
And if he can't wait, or they can't wait, then they have to go somewhere else.
Right. Because they'll push.
They push and push and push and push
until you push back a little bit.
Like I recently saw something on Facebook or something like that, and it was like a guy like in a restaurant or something like that, and it said, "What makes you think that you can just go into a restaurant, cut the entire line, and then tell the cook to make your dinner before he cooks anyone else's dinner?"
Yeah.
Well, that's what some of these people try and do. They come into the marina and they're like,
Right.
"Well, I need the boat for the weekend." All right, well, there's 7 people that are waiting for their boat from last weekend, so you're gonna have to wait.
Right.
And some people just don't like the word no.
Right.
And it was a struggle for me to deal with.
And I'm sure you don't like saying no either. No
of course
boss
not.
does. No
I don't
owner
want-
does.
I don't want to say no. I want to do as much as I can, as best I can.
Well, what happens in business is it's a rush. It's feast or famine. I always say, right? Because if you really spread it out, you get to everybody in the hours of 8 to 4, right? 5 days a week.
Yep.
And it'd be happy. But that's just not. No business operates that way. We just did a conversation. We had a conversation with a couple of girls who own a restaurant in Lindenhurst, Hermanas, and they said the same thing. If it was Saturday night every night, we'd be doing very well. But it's not Saturday night every night. And
100%
unfortunately, like you have such a big place. People see it's packed, they can't get a seat, you lose that customer. It kind of
That's business.
it stinks. I hate it.
Nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And the fact that my industry is very seasonal.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be front and center from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Right.
And then they forget about you. I'm calling you in the middle of the winter because I want to talk to you about fixing something on your boat.
Let's get it done now.
But you don't want to talk to me because the boat's shrink wrapped, and you probably think I'm trying to call you to collect some money that you owe me. But odds are I just want to talk to you about something that we talked about over the summer. And I want to try and address it now while I'm
before you get in Memorial Day.
Super busy.
And then you're number 7 behind the line.
Right. And then you're yelling at me, telling me why didn't I fix it or why didn't I do it?
Well, you know what's good about email? It's date and timestamp. Hey, check this. I did.
Yep.
We did try to reach out to
Text messages and email.
you. Yeah.
We
get it too.
There's a timestamp.
Yeah. No one thinks. I mean, listen. They think about us for the air conditioning in the summer, but it's every year. September is a mad dash. And then September to December of craziness.
Yep.
And then after Christmas, if it ain't cold,
Forget
that's
about
it.
it.
Forget it. No one wants to see us.
No one's
and I
worried about
totally get it. That's why we started the construction company, because no one likes putting boilers or air conditioners in. They like putting new bathrooms and kitchens.
Yeah.
So, it's good. That can be all year round. So
100%.
yeah. So now your business is starting to thrive. You're going, getting your systems in place. First 3 years, right?
Yep.
So where did you go from there?
So I had a technician that came to work for me that was a Mercury certified technician. And I didn't have any dealerships or franchises at the time.
Right.
And he insisted on maintaining his certification. So that was something that I promised him when I hired him, but I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to facilitate it.
Right.
So a friend of mine was in a similar business. He worked for a company, and he needed a technician on his roster for the dealership.
Okay.
He had qualified mechanics, just nobody actually had the certificate. So we wound up putting him on the dealership, and he then got his wage because he had a certified tech.
Right.
And occasionally they would call me and say, "Listen, we need you to send somebody over here.
So you're like a subcontractor almost.
We need you to help us."
Right.
So whether it was myself or this guy Pat that was the Merck certified tech, somebody would wind up going there once in a while.
Right.
And it got down to a point where we were involved in multiple different jobs that they had going on.
Right.
And it had turned out that my friend was trying to buy the place.
Okay.
And he was bouncing some ideas back and forth over me. And, I was kind of listening to what he said. And I agree with everything that he said.
Right.
But it just seemed like such a big undertaking. And I just wasn't sure how he was going to entertain buying all this stuff and operating it and
Right.
paying for it.
Right.
And they went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they couldn't come to an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of knew the entire deal because he was bumping it off of me back and forth. So I guess he was away or something like that. And he had someone there had called and said, "Hey, we've got a problem with this boat. We need someone to stop down here this afternoon if somebody could." And I went down there myself and I looked at it and I diagnosed what was wrong with it. And one of the owners of the place says, "Hey, why don't you come work here?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't need to come work here.
Yeah, my own marina.
Yeah, I have my own place." I'm like, "And I thought my buddy's buying this." And he says, "No." He says that's not going to go through, and he's leaving. And I was like, "Holy cow!"
Oh, so he was working there?
He was working there.
Oh.
They must have decided that they were going to get out, and they had offered it to him, and he was trying to figure out how to make the deal with that.
And he couldn't figure it out.
I don't know if he couldn't figure. I think that
He didn't have the means, maybe.
well, I think that him and one of the partners were just butting heads. I think that it just made the entire negotiation
Bad.
difficult. And I think that everyone got frustrated, and he left and got a job somewhere else.
Right.
And he now owns his own place now.
Marina?
A couple of years later, yeah.
Okay.
And
for him. Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I'm not working here. Why would I work here? I have my own place." you
Right.
know? And I left.
Right.
And a little bit of time went by, and I kind of called him and picked his brain a little bit. And they came back and they approached me and they said, "Listen, we want to make a deal with you." And I couldn't understand, like, why do you want to make a deal with
Right,
me? You
right.
don't even know me.
Right.
But I guess the little bit that I did and the rapport that I had with the previous management, I don't know. Right place, right time.
Once again, yeah.
Right people. And I'll never forget it. I met him at a diner, and he said to me, "Why don't you write up a proposal?" And I'm like, "For what? Proposal? I don't have millions of dollars to buy this place."
Right.
And he's like, "Well, maybe you crawl before you walk. Why don't you lease the place from us?"
Oh, so they own the property.
So they own the property, they own the business, they own all the equipment, they own the property to the north, to the south.
Oh, wow.
They had
So they're well off.
they had somehow inherited it and bought out some family members. Their uncle had owned it, and then they bought out I guess their cousin or something like that, and they tried to operate it for multiple years. And I just think that it wasn't their prime source, their main source of income, and they weren't involved in its daily operation. So I think it paid for itself and made some money, but there was a lot of potential there that was uncaptured. So I went home and got a piece of paper and wrote down some things on the piece of paper, and I talked to my friend that was trying to buy the place, and he kind of gave me some of the financial information that I needed, and we went back and forth, and I
Oh, so your friend that got out of the deal, he helped you?
he helped me. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah. I think
So
there
you
might have
kept
been
that
a
relationship.
little bit of animosity of what was going on.
I
but
could see him maybe being a little sour about
Right,
it.
but I think deep down inside he knew that, that I should at least give it a shot.
Try.
he tried talking me out of it a couple of times.
Right.
And I met back up with them and slid a piece of paper across the table, and they read through the whole thing, and they said, "All right, well, when do you want to start?"
Shit, I should have offered less.
And I said, "Holy cow!" I said, "When do I want to start?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I guess October."
So what was the deal? You were going to lease the business or lease the place?
So I wound up. There's many different aspects
Structures, yeah.
of these facilities. So, this facility has a gas dock, has a bed and breakfast.
So there's multiple streams of income.
There's all the dockage.
Okay.
There's winter storage.
Different corporations.
There's the mechanical aspect of it.
Did you have a good accountant at the time by then?
Yes.
Right, good.
Yeah, my accountant helped me through the entire
That's
process.
key. Yeah.
And I'm very good friends, very close with my accountant and
Right.
some of the guys that are in his firm that work with me. And a good attorney and a good accountant had a lot to do with me actually being able to write that piece of paper in a manner that it wasn't going to hurt me.
But isn't it funny that kids go to college and they become lawyers and accountants and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, who are they providing business for? Guys like us,
Me
right?
and you. Yeah.
It's kind of funny, but like we're, by doing these podcasts, we're trying to make the realization of everyone at the Marina, there's how many different plumbers, construction guys, doctors, lawyers. I try to tell everybody that it's the same level, no matter what you do, if you want to get it to that level.
100%.
But it's funny when you
Yeah, I don't have 100 lawyers as my customers.
No.
I might have 3 or 4 lawyers, plumbers, school teachers, electricians.
But everyone's hanging out in the same pool.
Everyone's in the same pool. Everyone is on the same level.
Kids can understand that at an earlier age. It would be more.
I think that you're 100% right. I think that the biggest problem is that they're indoctrinated in school into education.
Right.
Go to college, get a college degree, and whatever you want.
Right.
And you could be whatever you want.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with having the aspiration to become a computer engineer or something along those lines.
If that's your niche and that's your lane, hey, go do whatever you want.
But we don't need 400 graduates this summer to be computer engineers.
Right, exactly. So now the accountants and the lawyers, how'd you meet them? Were they?
So the accountant is a neighbor of mine.
Okay.
Lives in the neighborhood.
You still in West Islip?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
And I had met him, obviously, from some mutual friends in the neighborhood. And I work on his boat.
Okay.
When I had Amityville, I would work on his boat and store his boat and
Nice.
fix his boat and stuff like that. And same thing with the attorney. He came to me through another customer.
Right.
And I worked on his boat, and we built a relationship, and we've been doing business ever since.
How much of your business would you say is geared because of relationships?
I would say that probably 30 to 40% of it is based on relationships.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes it comes to bite me in the butt sometimes, if I could say that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of acquaintances.
Yes.
Not a ton of friends.
Right.
I think I'll go over and beyond for my friends.
Right.
And I'll definitely do the right thing for many of my acquaintances.
Right.
But I have a small group of friends that I have known for a long time.
Right.
And that's my core group. And
well, real friends aren't going to want you to give them a deal because they know that you're in business and you have to make money.
Correct.
Unfortunately, there's people who want the deal, and it's hard to do that and operate a company. And it's like harder now when you have your overhead that you have now than it was when you were like by yourself, right?
But I've told people that things have changed. I can't do it for that price anymore.
Yeah.
My expenses have gone up and my operating costs have gone up, and I think you should appreciate what I was able to do back then,
right,
and realize where we're at now.
Yeah.
And you can tell who's real and who packs up and leaves.
I tell customers a lot, like when you're starting out, like when I was starting out, like, I would run specials and stuff like that, and I wouldn't even make money. I wanted the customer base, but that's that's not the long play. Like, there's always going to be that cheap guy, but if he stays that way, like, I got a good accountant, he brought to the realization of me that if I keep going that way, I'm out of business.
Right. So
you have to raise your prices, not to be exorbitantly expensive, but you have to be where you're profiting, and that's so hard to do. And, a lot of times, like, you use your office to say, hey, I know this person has been a customer for 18 years, give them the price. Because if they talk to me, I'm going to end up feeling bad, and then we don't make any money, and I can't do that conversation anymore. I'm sure you're in the same
So
boat.
I've slowly started to transition myself out of the daily grind, and I've got 2 service managers, one on each location. I've got service writers now that write the tickets.
Yeah.
Got office manager. We've got comptroller.
But the tickets are structured on
Correct.
pricing. You develop the pricing because that's what you have to charge.
I give a friends and family discount to a couple of people.
Right.
And everybody else, either you pay the price or you go somewhere else. And sometimes, someone that thinks I should be giving them a deal might pack up and leave, and then they try and come back because the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Because they
of the
went
fence.
to the cheap guy. The guy was cheap, and then he had to raise his price.
Yeah,
It's
you get what you pay for.
Yes. Listen, I know there's a fine line there because there are some guys that are too expensive, absolutely. But if you're a medium single double guy, it sounds like to me what you are. So it's fair.
So we have a saying: you want it right, or do you want it right now?
Right, exactly.
And then we also have the other saying: there's the 3 things that you can. There's 3 things. Pick 2.
Right.
Good, fast, and cheap.
Right.
You can't have all 3.
Right.
You can only have 2.
Right.
And I mean, we try our best to be as competitive as we possibly can. But I've got 20 plus guys on my payroll.
Yeah.
I've got multiple different pieces of property with tax bills and mortgages.
Now, do you incentivize your customers or your clients to get the work done over the winter? Because you could, maybe give them some sort of percentage off if they get it done throughout the slow months?
So we don't give any type of percentage off to do any work in the winter.
It's just the time you'll be ready by then.
Right. Luckily, we have a very good following, a strong customer base, and obviously there's people that we've done business with that hate me or
I only asked that because
think I'm a crook or something.
I didn't think you could give a percentage off either because it's very hard because your margins are.
My margins get smaller and smaller and smaller. So what we'll do sometimes is if we see a price increase coming, we'll call the customer and say, hey, I know you have this job planned for the winter time.
Right.
Why don't we order all the parts right now? We can get a little discount on the parts.
Right.
Or we'll give you the incentive where you need this job done and it's going to be $7,500. We'll put you on a payment plan.
Right.
You make 3 payments.
Right.
There's things that we'll do to try and bring some work in.
Right.
But one of my biggest problems right now is how much work can I do with the staff that I have?
Right.
And there's not an abundance of talent coming up in the industry, just like in your industry.
Right.
And that's kind of a little bit of the reason why I'm here today and why we've been talking and, where this is headed. And
because no one talks about boat mechanics.
No.
And there's a lot of technology in an engine, and the things that you're doing, and that's furthering your education.
So everything now is becoming. I mean, you have a boat, so everything now is becoming fly-by-wire. It's coming to a point where if you're not authorized by the manufacturer of the engine, you can't plug in a computer and troubleshoot it.
Right.
I know a lot of these new boilers are the same thing. It's no longer checking the pilot and the nozzle and it's the computer. It's the computer board. And it's the technology. That's where we're headed. And there's a giant void in the industry for qualified or even just people that want to learn the trade.
So you can technically grow your business more because now you own the 2 properties. You have Seabourn and what's the other one called? South Bay. But you just don't have. How frustrating is that? That you could be doing maybe fixing another boat a day.
So it's frustrating to the point where you've got some mechanics that want to hold you hostage because they know.
Glad you said that was my next thing.
Because they know that they're not easily replaced.
But 20 years ago, it wasn't like that.
No, there was a good supply of
Right.
people. So
And not to be like the greedy business owner either, but it has to be fair. Where
it's got to be fair for me and fair for the employee. It has to be fair for everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
And in order for everyone to get along, it's got to be a level playing field.
Yeah.
And I have managers that sometimes feel, oh well, you treat this guy differently than you treat this guy. Well, I treat them all the same.
Right.
But you have to realize that without that guy, we can't do half those jobs.
Right.
So it's something that it's very frustrating on my point.
Yeah.
From my point of view, is that I don't want to treat anyone differently.
Right.
But at the end of the day, is depending on your skill set and how valuable you are.
Right.
Unfortunately, is the attention that and the treatment that you may get, or what you may get away with that someone else
won't.
might not be able to get away with.
Right. You have to make yourself valuable to the company, and in this day and age, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we want the young guys. We don't want helpers. We say it all the time. Like, I want you to be a helper for 6 months. Then I want you in a truck and going out because helpers don't make the company money.
No,
if you want to be a helper for 2 years, there's something wrong. So there's opportunity for advancement. But like you said, nowadays we're overpaying for help, and it's only because you can't find it and it's not there.
So I don't know about in your business, but I find that where I'm at right now, I've got a good crew of guys, but I have a huge age gap. I have guys that are in their mid-20s to early 30s, and then I go straight to 50, 60-year-old employees.
Right.
There's very few in the middle. I mean,
30 to 50, 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my early 40s, and I can count the people that are in their 40s on one hand.
Right.
Most of my mechanic force is early 50s, early 60s, or mid-20s, early 30s.
And you're hoping these mid-20 kids are retaining the knowledge and want to stick with it.
They are retaining the knowledge. And one thing that I can offer that I couldn't offer when I was, in Amityville in a smaller location is that, I'm an authorized dealer for Mercury,
Right.
Mercruiser, Yamaha, Volvo, Volvo Penta,
Wow.
Crusader. We recently became a Seakeeper dealer about 5 years ago, which is
That's awesome.
Which is I think you know a little bit about it. It's like it's a gyro stabilization system.
Yeah.
There's only 2 dealers in New York State, and
They can do it.
and
you're one of them.
and we're one of them.
So that says a lot.
So I allow these guys to go to school. I pay for them to go to school.
Further education.
Further education.
Right.
If you want to go to school, you're going to sign a contract. And the contract's basically going to say that, hey, if I send you to school and I pay for your week's salary, I pay for your hotel room, I pay for the class, I pay for your travel, I pay for some of your food, thousands of dollars for a week's worth of training.
You got to stay
And
here.
you decide that in 3 weeks from now, I got a job with Marine Max. Well, guess what? You're going to owe me the money back
Right.
for the money I just invested into you.
Right.
I think that the majority of the guys that are with me, they appreciate the fact that
And they're seeing the opportunity.
they're getting an education. They're seeing the opportunity to grow. To how do you come to me and ask for a raise after a year if you
can't do
haven't
more.
grown or you haven't expanded your education? Or and the same is in your business and my business is if you don't know how to work the computer to plug into the product, you can't fix it.
Yeah. You have to be everything now. In our industry years ago, you either you worked on gas or you worked on oil or you worked on AC. Now you have to know all three.
You got to be well versed.
That's the way it is. There are no more, because I get guys in their 50s come and say, I know how to put on oil burners. Right? Can you do anything else? No. So it's like, what do I do with you for the spring and summer
what
months?
am
Like,
I can't
you
invent
gotta
that much stuff to
evolve. Yeah, some people didn't want to learn, and
So-
it's just unfortunate.
So I think that a big thing that changed my employment, my people coming to look for a job was the fact that we started to offer health insurance. We started to offer 401k.
Us too.
I think that really separated me
That
from,
retained the good guys.
correct.
Yeah.
That kept the guys that were there happy.
Which comes at a big major cost to the business owner.
Major cost.
Yeah.
You know, where we used to buy breakfast and lunch every Saturday.
Right.
I buy lunch now.
Right.
And I hope that everyone there realizes that, hey, the expense for
Yeah.
these benefits is,
Yeah, you got guys making $100,000. That's $300 a month at least, just
Yeah.
going into their 401k.
yeah.
Times how many guys?
It adds up.
Yeah.
It adds up real quick. You
Yeah.
start looking at the bottom line at the end of the month and you're going, holy cow, where did all this money go? And
Yeah.
It's employee retention. That's really
Right.
what it comes down to. And
Right.
separating my business and your business from someone else that's operating that's not offering any of those
Right.
those benefits.
Right.
I think one of the biggest problems that I have is that some of these guys that have worked for me in the past, and I don't know about necessarily guys that are working for me now, but they think that they're out there and they're making me millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's
Well, I bring my supervisors in to show them, you know, like here's the gross sales, and it's a big number, and it looks great, but here's insurance,
Here's the
here's
breakdown.
rent, here's this. Look what we're left up with. You know, some months you lose. I don't think people understand that. So now the months you lose, no one ever talks about.
No.
And then you have a big month, but that month ain't that big because you still got to pay for the month.
digging the hole from the
Sometimes
shoveling out.
Like this year, we had 50 degrees winter. You know, so we may not be back in the black until August, September. You know, and I don't think people understand that.
Now they look at the
In
good.
our business, yeah.
They look at the good and not so much the bad. Like, you know, my worst month is February. You know,
Yeah.
February's my worst month. You have guys that are out at school.
Yeah.
You know, so all of a sudden my workforce is cut in half. Who's on vacation?
Right.
You know, and you start looking at the payroll. The payroll's still there.
Right.
The mortgages are still there. The
Yeah.
taxes are still due.
And it sucks that it's right after your year end
Right.
because
Right.
your profits go to the government, and then
Yep.
you know I talk with the guys at the glazing company all the time. Like, wish you could just have like a fund, because most businesses January, February are crap. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the way it is. It's after holidays. That's it.
Yeah, well,
You know.
I spent all the money in this.
Yeah,
in
you could
December.
utilize that tax money that you're paying to, but that's, you know, it's not gonna happen.
It's the nature of the beast.
Exactly. So now you still have the Amity location, which is South Bay, right?
Right. So I don't actually own the property.
You leased that from the woman.
I have a lease on that property.
So you still have that relationship with that? With that
Yes.
lease?
Yeah. I talked to her. Talked to her yesterday, actually.
Awesome. She must be proud of you.
Yeah. I get along very well with her. I
Right.
wish I could spend a little more time and see her like I used to, but I'm not over there really. I'm at the Bayshore
Now,
location.
not to cut you off, but there's a lot of the bigger work. You have the Bayshore facility. You take the boats over there, or do you still get as much work done there as well?
So Amityville is not authorized Mercury or Yamaha.
So the boats can be brought to you.
So the majority of the repower and the Seakeeper jobs and the big jobs go to Bayshore. It's a bigger facility. It's
Right.
easier to accommodate.
Right.
We have deep water access.
But you could sell to those customers and offer that because you own both.
I try not to really solicit too much Mercury and Yamaha work out of that facility because there is a Mercury Yamaha dealer down the block.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of want to respect him.
Oh, right.
And him and I do a lot of
So
business.
that's like the franchise.
Business back and
I
forth.
see. Okay.
There is no territory.
Right.
But I think that it would be unethical.
Well, your industry is a small industry, and you're all in the water, so
We all
you gotta
know
all
each
get
other.
along because you may need him one day. He may need you.
Right. He needs me. I need him. We'll talk about employees back and forth and who I fired and who he hired, or
Right.
you know, vice versa.
Right.
And if I have an engine in stock and
Right.
he needs it, I'll sell it to him at cost. And
Yeah.
same goes for him. He'll sell it to me at cost.
That's good.
I don't think that he's necessarily competition, but there's plenty to go around. And I think that we all tend to work together as owners
Yeah.
and try and keep everybody on a fair playing field.
Yes.
And I think that there's guys in the industry that don't follow that rule. and they have a hard time.
Yeah.
They have a hard time.
Yeah. I actually have a guy who was actually up the road from us. He, one of those guys, like when I was younger, like, hey, Ryan, I'm proud of you. I see what you're doing. I love you, stuff like that. I remember it was like a month before my daughter was born in 19. And he solicited away two of my top guys. Right, like a month before my daughter was born. And then he wrote me this whole long text on how, it's business and this and that. Now he'd go fuck himself, basically. That's where I'm at, and like a lot of people down, years ago, watch out, whatever. We never did any business or anything together. Maybe a couple jobs I did for him, but you stay away from those guys. And you talk about a guy who's already got all the money. He didn't need to do that, but you try to keep the guys down. But just sometimes that ignites the fire even more, and there you go.
So I think in the industry that you're in, the industry that I'm in, I think there's multiple other industries that we could talk about. That there's so many qualified technicians, and there's so many places to work.
Yes.
And there's guys that have worked for you for
Right.
10, 15 years probably. There's guys that have been working with me from the beginning. But there's guys that you see that come and go.
Rotation. Yeah.
Works here for 2 years, works there for 2
Got
years.
$1 an hour more over
Yep.
here. Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy.
It's amazing.
So now, what do you
the
think?
cycle.
What do you think about this charity that we're doing?
I think the charity's great.
Yeah.
I think that it's definitely
So there's definitely a need in your industry,
well
right?
needed, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I've been talking with some of the manufacturers and
Right.
trying to offer some type of program within the BOCES
Oh, that'd be awesome.
program.
I'm talking with them, so because I go talk to the kids at the schools.
Yeah, I remember you telling me. Yes.
So Westbury, I talked to them a couple of weeks ago, and one of the ladies who's in charge of like job placement with the guys, which is a tough job because if you're not in the industry, it's tough to have job placement, or do that. She wants me to come back and talk to a bigger crowd of kids, because I try to tell my story, kind of like your story, and it's not all geared towards HVAC. It's just geared towards like, this is life. This is what's going to happen. Here's the good. Here's the bad. You're going to have to deal with it. And, I'll show you. We wrote up the whole thing about the charity, about what we want to do. And really, it's geared to just have the kids come to the realization in high school, 12th grade, that you got to work, and it's not going to be easy. And, this is what's going to be expected of you when you get in the real world from your employer. So it shouldn't be a shock to you. You should be expecting it and, have them ready to go 18, 19 years old.
So I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I hate to sound like this, but I think that the public school system, I'm not sure about the private school system, but they're not preparing the kids
Cattle,
for real life.
Yeah.
I think you're going to college too, and you're not really.
And it's nothing
prepared.
against them either. That's what they're taught. That's the curriculum.
That's the curriculum. 100%.
Yeah. So, I'll mention her name again, Monica Martinez, our state senator. Rich Schaefer got me in contact with her. I had a conversation with her 2 weeks ago. So hopefully she'll be helping us with that. Getting that curriculum in 9th and 10th grade to start this discussion. This way we're planting the seeds.
Yeah.
9th, 10th grade.
100%.
So by senior year, they're geared towards.
A little bit of a direction.
Absolutely.
I think that the worst thing that they did, at least in my high school, and I think it's still, they eliminated auto shop class.
Yeah, a lot of them.
I mean, I don't think anyone realizes, but we all drive a car.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna have to fix it.
Yeah.
And I remember reading, I can't remember the author on the tip of my tongue, but I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Rob Kiyosaki.
Yes. And, he had a lot of valid points, but I'm not necessarily convinced that the curriculum wants to adhere to some of his ideas. And I think that there's a lot of people that I know that recommended that book to that are, he might be a school teacher, but he does house painting.
Right.
And, I think there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of social media stuff going on right now where you have influencers and promoters and, well, there's nothing that says that, you can't be an electrician and also
Have a YouTube channel.
Yeah. I mean, it needs to bend with the times. It doesn't mean that you need to be a house painter, and a plumber.
Right.
There's multiple different ways to skin a cat, I guess.
Right. Well, at the end of the day, the people who want to get more and do more will do more.
100%.
And the people who want a job and want to work 40 hours a week, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm almost envious of that sometimes, that you just have your job and do, because like my wheels are always turning, as yours are. Which
All the
is,
time.
Like
All the time.
what's like the next thing, so it's, everyone has their niche. But so now back to you and what you've accomplished. You own the 2 marinas. Now is it bed and breakfast over in Seabourn too?
So there's some property next door to the marina,
Right.
where the Ocean Bay House is located.
Now you own all that property?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. So, and then I also acquired a bunch of property down the block from South Bay Marine in Amityville,
Okay.
which I currently have for sale in the market, but we'll see.
Commercial or residential?
It's commercial.
Okay.
I had planned on expanding that location, but the deal in Bayshore came up, and it's all rented out. And there's actually, the reason I brought it up is because there's a young man that worked for me, who had left and went out on his own.
Right.
And he actually had left and went to work for someone else.
Right.
And then he had gone out on his own, and I was proud of him.
Kind of like how you did.
Yeah, that he kind of like took the initiative and took the leap. And I had bumped into him a couple times, and he lives local, and I always try and give him some insight and some direction, and
Right.
I think he bounces stuff off of me once in a while, and I'll even call him and ask him his opinion on things, and
That's
just
good.
to get his opinion. And he actually rents 2/3 of that property,
Oh wow.
and he runs a little marina out of there
From you.
from me.
That's awesome.
He reminds me a lot of myself.
So you gave me the opportunity to
years
rent
and
it.
years ago. Yep, there was a tenant that was in there that wouldn't accept a rent increase after I bought the property, and he decided that he was just going to stop paying the rent, and one thing led to another, and I had to get him evicted out of there more or less, and clean the place up a little bit. And I had approached him, and he was like, "No, I'm happy. And I guess a few people had spoken to him, and one thing led to another, and I said, "Listen, take a little piece, see what happens."
Right.
You can't
Little push.
you can't go on Montauk Highway and get a piece
Right.
of waterfront property with a travel lift,
Right.
and they're not building any more waterfront property, especially no more marinas. So he rented half the property, and now he operates his business on 2/3 of the property. I have a few other tenants that are on the property, and he's been doing great.
That's great.
He went from storing maybe 20, 30 boats. I think he had 70 boats in there this winter.
Good for him.
And I kind of look at him, and I see myself a little bit from years back.
Yeah.
And I have like I said, I have a guy that's been with me. His name is Christian, and he's been with me since the beginning, and I treat him like family. And
Right. Now that's the one that was with you when you first took over
when
Amityville.
I first got started, and he's
That's
been with me
cool.
ever since. And we've had our disagreements.
And he's progressed, obviously.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. He's Mercury certified mechanic now. He's probably one of my better inboard, outboard, stern drive troubleshooting.
Right.
He's working his way into becoming an outboard certified technician now.
Right.
But I'm starting to think about golden handcuffs for him.
Yeah.
I don't have any kids right this minute.
Right.
But even if I did have a kid in the next year or two, the odds of that kid being able to operate any of this stuff in the next 15 to 20 years is slim to none.
Right.
So I think that he's a little envious of this other employee that went out and went on his own. But I think that he sees the big picture, and
Right.
Eventually the day is going to come when I'm going to
Opportunity will present itself.
say to him, "Listen, you and that other guy need to figure out how you're going to get me out of this
Right.
daily grind."
Right.
And eventually I'll become the landlord. And maybe he'll buy the place from me someday.
Right.
Who knows? But that's the end game that I think that a lot of younger people don't see
Right.
or don't realize.
Well, I think they're taught instant gratification, and that's just not how it works.
Immediate gratification.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not how it works.
I mean, I can remember I had an employee that was like a yard guy, And you could tell he wanted to be more than a yard guy. And the Snap-on truck came in there one day, and he blew his whole paycheck in the Snap-on truck. And when he came out of that Snap-on truck,
says something.
I swear to you, he walked out of there, he thought he was a mechanic. It was instant gratification.
Right.
And a mechanic, it takes years.
It takes a lot of mistakes.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot of mistakes and schooling and mentorship. And and I gave him credit for wanting that. And from what I hear, he is a pretty decent mechanic now. But, you know, the instant gratification it's not there.
Right.
It's not there. And I think if you do have instant gratification, you don't appreciate it for what it actually is.
Right, right. Well, I had a friend of mine, he's a chief of pediatric surgery in Stony Brook. His name's Rich. Awesome guy, he's a boat guy. He's same dock as me. And I go fish with him. But he tells his story, and, you know, it's 9 years of schooling. And then when you get out of schooling, at the end, those last couple of years, you're cleaning the ER room. You know, you're starting at the bottom. So even though you went to college and you spent the money and you did all this stuff, you're still starting at the bottom. You're going to learn everything from the way up. And that's when, you know, you could respect it the most. And then when you're older, you could respect the kids doing what you did. You know, so it's important. So what, like kids tell me all the time, I ask them all the time, you going to college? What are you going to college for? Business management. Okay, managing what? Not sure. Well, who told you that? Well, I just know I have to go to college to be successful. I said, but a good business manager has done every aspect of the job before he's manager. So that's the best way to go. And it kind of clicks with some, and then others, you really got to talk to them a couple times about it. You know, not to talk anybody out of college, but, you know, you kind of can look at a kid and see, you know, not looking at him, you could talk to him and see, like, who's more of a hands-on person.
You can gauge his his perspective on it. And and it's funny that you bring that up, because I started with Willie in Amityville as a bottom painter. Right. And I worked my way up from bottom painter, you know, to equipment operator. Mm-hmm. So I was saying that I started in Amityville as a bottom painter. Right. And I slowly worked my way up, you know, to running the equipment, to fixing engines and rigging boats. And
but he saw that in you. You wanted to do it.
Right. I wanted to do it. And I think I've done every position, whether it be cleaning the bathroom, driving the forklift,
sweeping the floor,
driving the hydraulic trailer, sweeping the floor, ordering parts, invoicing, writing letters, whatever it is, I've done.
And you'll still do it now if you have.
I'll do whatever you have.
If it's something that you need to jump in, yeah, absolutely.
Whatever it has to do. I find myself changing the toilet paper in the bathroom more often than I would like to. But some employees that we've had in the past, you know, they think that, well, you know, I can do this and he can't do this.
Right. Well, that's beneath me.
Think again, because you can leave.
Right.
And I'll do your job until I find someone else.
Right.
That can do it.
Well, that's the strength of being an owner operator. That's where, like, when you get into other businesses, you know, some people own businesses that never. Some guy called me the other day. He's an accountant. He owns a heating company. He was like looking for me to kind of like, I don't know what he was looking for me to do, but I could kind of tell that he probably was a little in over his head with certain things. Like, you know, you need to, there's plenty of business owners out there that don't know how to turn a wrench or do anything, and they do great, and that's fine.
Right.
But to a certain scale, right? But then you're really backed against the wall with you guys, because if you can't do what they do, you don't know if they're doing it right anyway.
You don't even know if they're taking their time or they're wasting their time. Listen, I don't want to go polish somebody's boat.
No.
But if it's Tuesday afternoon and I have to, I can.
At least you know you can.
Yeah, and that's I think important. They all know.
Right.
That he'll come out here and do it. And he's probably going to do it quicker and better.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be the one going.
And he's going to be real pissed off that he has to, because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's good about being owner operator. But like you said, you know, it's a short-lived thing. You know, like with me, I was owner operator. I still am. But for the first 10 years of my business, I started from 06. I missed birthdays, right? I mean, you miss birthdays, you don't go on vacation.
Nope.
You say goodbye to your weekends. You know, that's just the way it is. You know, and you got to come to that realization, which you did probably as well. With now you have people that work with you, and I would say work with, not work for.
Correct.
Because we all work together.
We all work together. They all work with me. But it's funny as hell because my wife, came from a 9 to 5 household, and when we first met, I really didn't have all the responsibility.
Right.
And for years and years, she would be like, well, "What do you mean you have to work on Saturday?" Listen, Saturday's my busiest day.
Yeah.
I have to be there.
Right.
Not only, just maybe now, the last year or so, I've been able to sneak away on some Saturdays.
Right.
And, I'm forever hearing, "You missed her first birthday." Well, I don't think she remembers if
For your
I'm
niece or
at the
something?
at her first birthday or not.
Yeah.
But don't worry, I was at her 7th birthday and we bought her a Power Wheel.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just using it as an example. But,
Yeah.
I missed.
We're gonna have to get our wives together for dinner because it's funny. Our stories are very much in line. Because when I met my wife, same thing. I was on call 24/7. So I said to her, I said, before we get in this relationship, like just know my phone's always on. It rings at 2:00 in the morning. I gotta go. And she was cool with it. So my wife was like, I probably owned my business for 8 years before I met her, and then the real growth happened when I met her, which is same thing for you.
Same thing with
So it's exciting.
Same thing with me.
But it's a growing pain with the relationship on top of it. Plus, I became a stepdad like overnight.
Okay.
My stepson was a year and 6 months old then, so it was exciting. I was a dad. I was a husband like this, and then growing a business.
So we were dating for a long time, and we only got married August.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, so I waited till I was 40 years old to get married.
Right.
I think she was waiting and waiting and waiting, and
Right.
Her family was when's this gonna happen?
What are you doing, Artie?
What are you doing? You're getting older, I mean,
Yeah.
she's 6 years younger than me, so I mean we've got some time. We're gonna start having some kids, I guess, in the near future.
Right.
It was frustrating for her. It was frustrating for her family, and I think now she can kind of step back and look at it from a different perspective and
Look what you've accomplished.
look at what we've accomplished. Look at what we have. Look at what we've built. And I tell her all the time. I go, this has got a lot to do with you too, and I didn't do this all on my own.
You need a support system.
Yeah, you were there to support me. You were there to lean on. You gave me advice. You talked me out of irrational decisions, and I think that at the end it worked out very, very well.
So how old's your wife?
35.
So is my wife. So the same age. Okay.
All right.
That's
Maybe they know each other.
She's a teacher in Lindenhurst.
Okay, my wife is a 401k administrator for a company in farming in Huntington.
Oh, so you have a good 401k for your
Yeah.
employees. You use that. That's awesome.
Yeah. She doesn't manage it because we didn't want them to be involved in my operation, but she definitely
Right.
she definitely has her finger on the
button.
on the button with my comptroller and office manager and accountant and whoever else is involved. And
So we're definitely gonna have to go and do another one of these and talk about the company some more.
Sure, definitely. But I love the idea of the scholarship, and I think whatever I can do to help.
Well, if you want to be a
involved,
board member, we're looking for some more board members. We
I'd be
kind of want to
interested.
have, not nothing that's going to take too much of your time, but just I kind of like having different career paths of board members involved. As many as we want. So if you're boats, we have another guy who's a plumber or electrician or construct. This way everyone kind of can jive together and talk about
definitely.
different ideas.
Definitely.
It's something like that will be
and
good.
whatever I can do to, if you need some speakers for some high school students or some insight towards some BOCES programs.
Yeah.
I think I've got a good rapport with some of the manufacturers that we deal with, and some of the right people in the right places. And I just think that.
Well, that's great because what I'm really trying to do is once we get kids entered in this charity, I want to have monthly talks with them at town hall.
Okay.
So it's fit more kids, and that'll be part of their requirements. They got to show up to that.
Okay.
So once again, we're making them accountable.
Yeah.
And then we could have different. We can talk about boat mechanics one month. We could talk about HVAC mechanics the next month. We could talk about plumbers the month. All different things.
And there's a lot more to the marine industry than just being a mechanic. I mean, you've got the sales end of it.
I'm glad you said that because I talk about that a lot.
So you've got the sales end of it. You've got the administrative end of it. Obviously, you have the mechanical end of it. But there's also captains, you know, if we don't get any captains, who's going to run the ferry?
Right.
If we don't have any captains, who's going to take you charter fishing?
Right.
You know, with you and your buddies on.
So there's even a lack of captains?
There's just a lack of. I just feel like there's just a lack of.
Right.
I don't know how to put it. I feel like everybody is involved in computers and involved in all different aspects of technology. I think that as a group, I think that we're forgetting about, you know, the mason, the plumber, the electrician, the car mechanic. My father was in the auto glass business. You know,
There's a million.
there's a lot of trades
Yeah.
that you can make good living.
There's a guy I talked to like 6 months ago. He did his boiler, maybe a year ago, because time flies. He works for a company that they fix copy machines. That's trade.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, because how many copy machines are there out there? You know, especially bigger businesses and offices, and
Yeah.
that's a trade. You know, so pulling wires, fiber optics,
there's a
million
lot of,
things. Yeah,
there's a lot of different things, and I think that as a group, I think that, you know, we're missing the boat, and I don't think that we're going to see the demise in the next 5 or 10 years. Hopefully, we can change that a little bit.
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know in 20 years from now if.
Well, I keep saying we're 10 to 15 years out of it. Even if we start tomorrow and get 100 kids involved, we're still 10, 15 years out.
100%.
So, but it can happen. So with
definitely can
that mindset, we make it happen, and we keep figuring it out.
I'd love to be part of it.
I appreciate it.
Whatever I can do to help.
Absolutely. So.